shot to death. During the investigation, Adrian Cameron, a 47-year-old man, was identified as an individual who needed to be questioned in this homicide and who likely had information. Mr. Cameron is a convicted felon. Our information was that Mr. Cameron was armed with high-powered guns, and we even developed information over the past day or so that Mr. Cameron had been threatening witnesses who we had identified as part of the Evans homicide investigation. During the day today, our Titans group learned that Mr. Cameron was in a room here at the Days Inn behind me. He was in a room on the second floor. After assessing where Mr. Cameron was, the fact that he is a convicted felon, that he had a parole violation warrant that had just been issued, and the fact that he is known to have high-powered weapons, the police department SWAT team was asked to assist in the execution of a search warrant of this hotel room, as well as assist in taking Mr. Cameron into custody on the parole violation warrant. The SWAT team arrived at the motel, positioned a SWAT vehicle outside Mr. Cameron's room, and made announcements over the loudspeaker for Mr. Cameron to surrender. The officers fully expected Mr. Cameron would see that the SWAT team was there and that he should surrender. The door of his motel room opened. A female came out. She was quickly grabbed and taken into safety by SWAT members on the second floor. Seconds later, Mr. Cameron himself came to the threshold of the door with a high-powered rifle-type pistol, which was semi-automatic, may have been fully automatic. We're still analyzing the gun. He fired multiple rounds, causing the SWAT team members to return fire to him. Now, when he fired those rounds, he was directing his bullets at the SWAT members. We had 3 SWAT members return the fire. Mr. Cameron was hit and fatally wounded. The investigation into the Evans homicide is continuing. We think that there are other persons involved in this. We have a lot of more information to gather. We know that Mr. Cameron's 16-year-old son was in this motel room earlier today and may have left the hotel room armed. His name is also Adrian Cameron Jr. or the second, and the police department would like to know where he is. Again, we have questions for him in regard to the homicide of Mr. Evans. So, to encapsulate where we are tonight, Adrian Cameron, who was wanted for a parole violation and who was wanted for questioning in the murder of Josh Evans from earlier in the week, was in the motel room here tonight. SWAT members ordered him over a loudspeaker to come out of the room peacefully and surrender. Mr. Cameron ignored those commands. He chose to come to the door armed with a high-powered gun and opened fire on the SWAT team in the parking lot below. 3 SWAT members returned the fire. Mr. Cameron was fatally wounded and died at a local hospital. That's where we are.
Don, can you tell us if Mr. Cameron was on you guys' wanted list, and if so, how long?
So, Mr. Cameron's name was developed as a person who needed to be questioned in regard to the homicide of Mr. Evans. We, from the information we have at present, do not believe that Mr. Cameron committed the homicide, but that he had critical information in regard to it. And we had also received information just in the past day that Mr. Cameron had made threats to witnesses who had provided the police department with information in regard to the Evans homicide. Given the totality of all that information, we had been discussing his situation with federal authorities and state authorities. A parole violation warrant was issued for Mr. Cameron, so the officers here tonight were going to take him into custody as part of the parole violation warrant, and then we wanted to question him in regard to the homicide. But because of his propensity for weaponry and his propensity to threaten others, as we had been informed, we did a threat assessment of him. The threat assessment was strong, so the SWAT team was here to assist in executing the arrest of him, and then a search warrant of a search of the motel room. Obviously, we wanted to look for weapons in that motel room to see if some of these weapons could have been linked to the murder of Mr. Evans. Everybody got it?
Yeah. Any details on what led you guys to this particular hotel? Any information on what led you to that?
Suffice it to say that we have been pursuing a number of leads in the Evans homicide throughout the week. Those leads led to Mr. Cameron being identified as a person who had knowledge. Then we had information that Mr. Cameron had made threats to witnesses, and as a result of various police department efforts, we were able to learn that he was here at this motel room, and in fact, an undercover team had confirmed that he was in that second-story motel room and had not come out at the time the SWAT team arrived to execute both the arrest warrant and a search warrant of the motel. Now, the homicide of Mr. Evans remains an active investigation. Our homicide unit continues to do a lot in regard to this. As far as the shooting of Mr. Cameron, the shooting incident where Cameron fired at us and we fired back, that investigation will be handled by the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. So the murder case continues to be handled by us. What happened here tonight, because it is a fatal police shooting, will be handled by the TBI.
How are the SWAT officers involved in the shooting? How do they?
No police officers were injured. The SWAT officers are okay, and they are remaining here at the scene and are assisting with the investigation as to what's taken place here.
What's it like for them to go do something like that?
Well, let me say that the 3 SWAT officers involved are all supervisors. There are 2 lieutenants, Lieutenants Bob Doak and Jeff Sanders, and Sergeant Josh Black. These are veteran members of our SWAT team. They go through extensive training. They are all supervisors in other roles at the police department. They are veterans. Officers don't come to work at the beginning of the day wanting to be engaged in a situation such as this, but from time to time it's part of the job. And these 3 SWAT members were forced tonight to use force on a man who had used extensive force in their direction, who had fired a high-powered gun toward them. That's the situation in which they found themselves tonight. Do they wish they were home tonight watching a football game? Yeah, I can tell you they do. But they're here and they're dealing with what's happened.
Were any motel guests at it?
No one else was hurt. Okay?
Can you confirm what time this happened?
7:50.
7:50.
7:50.
Okay, and will the hotel be reopening anytime soon?
I don't think the motel itself is totally closed. The TBI will have its team here, its evidence processing team here, and it will be, the shooting itself occurred on the back side of the motel, so that work is going to be done for the next several hours by the TBI.
John, if you could describe to us just how many shell casings and how many shots were fired on both ends, could you talk about that?
That will be that's part of the TBI investigation.
Can you spell Adrian Cameron?
ADRIAN age 47.
And John, just to clarify, he was wanted for questioning, but we're not calling him a suspect.
He was wanted for questioning in the Evans homicide. We do not believe that he actually committed the homicide, but had information about it. We believe that he had significant information about the homicide. He was wanted on a parole violation warrant issued by the state of Tennessee. Okay?
The female that was taken away to safety, what's her status
That female, as she was taken away to safety, we had a police dog as part of the SWAT members who were on the side of the side of the motel room. So when she came out and was taken to safety, being taken to safety, the dog did bite her on the arm. So she needed treatment for a dog bite to her arm. And we have officers who are also talking with her about what knowledge she may have had that Cameron possibly shared with her in regard to the homicide case. Okay?
I got a question on the Joshua Evans murder. You said there is still more suspects that y'all are looking for to question, or people of interest?
Well, not to be repetitive, but I need to be in this situation. We do not believe that Mr. Adrian Cameron Sr. committed the murder. At this point in time, the person who committed the murder is not in custody. We have a lot of work yet to do. We have to arrest and confirm the identity of the person who committed the homicide, and then we'll see where the investigation takes us from there.
I just want to get some clarification.
Okay.
on that. I misunderstood what you said earlier.
That's good. Everybody good? All right. Thanks.
Where you walk, Lately, pick that off yet.
The COB was